closed, you were mentioning that it's a little bit difficult to deal with some of Quinn's emotions.
Yeah. Quinn is complex. Um, they are, I mean, it's all those things that you expect to see with someone who really struggles with um, their own self worth, how to deal with trauma, and how to acknowledge flaws that they may have. Um, Quinn is not someone who does well with those things, and I feel like is kind of like that typical perfectionist. Like everything has to be perfect, everything has to be exactly as is, and there's not a lot of grace in forgiving themselves or um, understanding that they're not a perfect person.
Yeah, those are really difficult things to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to speak for you, but I know for me personally, I have struggled with all of those feelings on my own in the past, like repeatedly, and tried to get rid of them, you know. Um, so I was feeling a bit of that challenge the last two sessions playing as Reeve and then Quinn, trying to reconcile, trying to bring, I think, a little bit of my own feelings to the character just so that I could kind of like reliably portray the character a little bit more, but also to understand the character because I think sometimes the easiest path to empathizing with another is to look at their situation from your perspective if you have a relative, frame of reference.
Yeah.
But when like trying to play a character, it can be kind of challenging to like if you put yourself if you put bits of yourself into that and then you spend more time in that, you're revisiting those bits of yourself that you were maybe trying to grow beyond or leave behind or deal with in different ways than the character is dealing with them. Um, and so you have to like we have to debrief and digest and separate those emotions from our real lives and our personal individual lives. Um, and I think yeah, just support each other in like recognizing what is Quinn and what is us, what is Reeve,
Mm-hmm.
what is us. I don't know. It's weird.
It's difficult. Yeah, no, and nailed it. I have always been a perfectionist and very much have what they call eldest daughter syndrome. So, always trying to achieve that high expectation. And I often set like probably unrealistic goals of myself, um, that I have to do everything just right and I have to be the best at something. I have to constantly be an achievement to feel like I'm successful. And sometimes that's not where success is. And that has definitely been something that I've had to really like rectify in my own psyche is that success can also be failure. Um, and I kind of felt like that was what I tried to bring today was that Quinn acknowledging where they struggle and where they probably fail or they think they fail in life, um, was how they needed to achieve their goal. And being able to come to terms with that was particularly difficult for them, but I also think it was something for them that they needed to do as we start exploring this character more in depth and how they're going to handle all these things that are coming up. Um, but one of the things that I think is particularly interesting about Quinn is when they start to have these breaks, or when they start to have these breakthroughs, I should say, is that I feel like they're so scared of it that now Reeve comes forward.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I don't know a ton personally about like dissociative identity disorder or what it's like to have alters or what triggers um, a shift between identities necessarily in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of always planned for if one of our characters falls unconscious, they will kind of automatically uh, twitch to the altar,
Yeah.
whichever that is. But that was meant to be kind of just through like taking damage. So if their HP drops
Mm-hmm.
to 0, they switch. In this case, I think because you had done such a great job of like really leaning into Quinn's psyche and Quinn's emotions and Quinn's feelings and really painted the picture of how fragile Quinn is. And I think we have really been exploring that a lot the last few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it just became a natural decision, at least for me. Like I really didn't even think about it, that after the vision, Quinn was sheltered again, like in locked away. Reeve is back,
Right.
not through taking any damage. Like Reeve isn't going to suffer any psychic damage. Neither did Quinn. Quinn is
Mm-hmm.
just in hiding now. This vision is too much for them. The revelation is probably what they want to hear, but at the same time, getting what you want can be terrifying.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we've identified that Quinn struggles with is afraid of admitting what they want and afraid of getting what they want.
Yes. Um, I, and it's one of those things too with Quinn. I think they also understand the consequences of what they want. So it's scary in that aspect too of if I actually get what I want, is it going to be the best possible outcome? Because that was something too that when we went and had the conversation with the headmaster, and really the headmaster said like these are the only two options, and Quinn was not willing to accept that there had to be more tragedy in order to get what they wanted.
Yeah.
And I think that is going to be something that they have to grapple with is what are the actual consequences of getting what you want, and is it worth it?
That hesitation uh, that I think you did a really great job of bringing forward, because I wouldn't. Had I been Quinn in that choice, I probably would have just said, okay, I'll make a choice. Like, I'm not going to ask for a third option. Um, but the fact that you, as Quinn, hesitated, I think is kind of like key and central to the story and the development of this character. Um, that that conflict of there has to be some other way is like I think a pivotal point to the like overall story that we're trying to tell. But it's an internal conflict that's going to come up a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, part of that too with like Quinn is very, while very pragmatic, they are also someone who is incredibly solution oriented. Um, and I feel like with a little bit of their intellect and how um, one educated they are, how cunning they are, that they're not willing to accept that there's only two paths. Like there are multiple ways to approach this, and I think that's
Yeah.
something that um, when I put myself in Quinn's shoes is I really dive into like, what are my options? Like, what are the possible paths? How much information do I need? What are my resources? And how do they pull from those different areas to actually make an informed decision? Because I think that's the other part of it is Quinn wants as much information as possible before actually going down a route.
Yeah. Which is like polar opposite of Reeve
Yeah,
sometimes, right? Like,
yeah. Breathe is just gut instinct. Like, this is what we're doing. I'm here to thrive.
right.
um, which is so interesting. Who's DMing next session? Like, what are we doing?
So I still have plans for the next session.
Okay.
So I'm planning on DMing.
All right. Because I was like, holy shit, where do I pick up from here?
Right. I think the more curious question, because I wasn't necessarily, like I said, I wasn't planning for this to end on Quinn or Reeve. I was
Mm-hmm.
kind of going to leave it up in the air. This wasn't necessarily meant to be combat or role play either. It was
Yeah.
There was options for either. You could have fought the Secret Eater or resolved it through roleplay, which is what you ended up doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which was ultimately the way cooler way to do this.
Yeah.
Like narratively far more satisfying. The combat would have been fun, but Reeve would have probably shown up a lot sooner.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Quinn is squishy, squishy.
yeah, no offense to Quinn, but Reeve would have had to finish the fight. So there was always the thought that Reeve will most likely make an appearance in this episode in my
Yeah.
head, but wasn't guaranteed
Right.
until that last moment where I was like, oh, this just makes sense now. Reeve wakes up. But now that that has happened, that kind of changes the tone for how the next steps will be handled. And I don't want to like give away any spoilers, but
Oh, no, don't.
I won't say anything necessarily. But you are aware, the viewers are aware, Quinn is aware. The goal that was laid out by the headmaster was to seek out the mask
Mm-hmm.
and then go find the seal beneath the haunted gate. Right? Quinn had reservations about that.
Yes.
Will Reeve share those reservations?
I'm very interested in how this is going to shape out because it just, Reeve is so no impulse control.
Yeah.
They just do it, and it's kind of one of those of like, well, let's see what happens. They are the epitome of let's fuck around and find out.
Yeah.
And I kind of love that. Um, and I think it's fun to approach too because as you and I said, like both of us kind of resonate with Quinn, like the the anxiety of meeting certain expectations, whether set by outside influences or your own internal desires and urges. You and I think that's a very human thing too, which is important. Like this is just something that is incredibly um, difficult. I guess the human condition uh, to always feel like you have to be high status, high achievement, always moving on to the next goal and doing bigger, better things. Um, but trying to deal with that reservation, whereas Reeve is kind of that escape. Um, and Reeve is just doesn't care and we'll hash it out when we cross that bridge and what consequence.
As much as Reeve is a instrument for more power, they are also yeah, like they are freedom a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So it isn't just a matter of yeah, it isn't just I am stronger as Reeve. It is I can do whatever I want as Reeve because I don't care.
Yeah.
Not just like I'm strong enough to do whatever I want to do. I don't care enough, so I can do whatever I want to do.
Mhm.
Um, which is I think like the more interesting dichotomy, right? Like the power dynamic, like the physical and metaphysical, like Reeve as a um, warlock versus Quinn as a wizard at differing levels. Like
Mhm.
those are less interesting dichotomies to me than the the passion in Reeve and the um, I don't know. I want to say the like dedication and uh, rigid focus of Quinn.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's kind of like one of the interesting things about it is like while the class is totally like it it felt more important in the beginning. I feel like when we had first talked about this, I'm like, oh well, yeah, we should probably do something that's more like kind of similar as far as like we want a spellcaster, we kind of want them to be able to like grow, like which one takes more of this versus this. And we kind of like have talked about those things. But I'm realizing now that what we're seeing is more the dichotomy between the two is like when you actually break it down on the character sheet level, the stats. You've got Reeve, who's incredibly charismatic, and charisma can go one way or the other. It can be like you're either scary charismatic or you're like, hey, yeah, kind of appealing charismatic, or
Right.
you've got Quinn, who's incredibly intellectual. And again, that can go two ways. You can be incredibly cunning and smart, um, and just have this like plethora of knowledge, or you're very rigid in the way that you think. So I think it's really interesting that you see these dichotomies even just in how Quinn and Reeve present themselves coming into play, especially as we start to play the characters more.
Mhm.
And I think kind of like one of the cool things is getting to pick up where you left off, um, and me trying to decide like how much does Quinn remember of when they were dreaming, I guess is what I would call it, or maybe in the mental apartment, but when they um, were in that mental scape and incorporating the impact of what that was. Because Quinn does not remember much of it, but what they do remember was the feeling that they had. And that was something that I was like, this is going to be more important moving forward, is recognizing how those dreams impacted Quinn once they're awake. Because they try to, again, put up that front that they're fine, that they're here to get the job done, rigid, focused. But in the back of their mind, they feel that little inkling of uncertainty.
Yeah, and do they want to even like pick at that?
And I think that's the bigger question. Is it willfully ignoring it? Or is it they can't confront it because they'll just crumble and shatter?
Mhm. Yeah, maybe a little of both. I don't know. It's probably too early to tell, but
Yeah.
I
I
feel
don't even
like
know
when
Quinn. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I feel like when presented with anything, just that is too overwhelming or too much, um, I think now Quinn kind of does have this supernatural subconscious choice.
Mm-hmm.
Not that anybody with DID ever has the ability to make this a conscious choice, but in our
Right.
setting, this is somewhat of a supernatural state that Quinn and Reva found themselves in, this pact. And as they look closer at it and become more aware of it, do they influence it? Can they influence it? Are they aware of it? And when they become aware of it, can they affect it? So when Quinn feels that itch, can they scratch it? When they scratch it, can they look away from it again? Can they choose to turn into it? Can they choose to like disassociate? Um, or is it just sort of like an easy reflex when something really shocking happens to just turn to that space in their emotions, in their mind, where they kind of allow themselves to be overwhelmed?
Yeah. Um, I'm really curious to see how it's going to play out later. I I do think the choice that you made with Quinn having to see this vision, not being able to handle it mentally, and then just going, you know what, I can't do this right now. And then the brief coming in. I think that's something that's really important to notice is that um, how is Quinn coping with all this external pressure?
Yeah, because Quinn seems like the type of person that allows pressure to accumulate internally.
I absolutely agree with that. They are someone who, instead of trying to deal with it, they just bottle it up. And you know, when you bottle up pressure and you push it down, eventually it just pops.
Hmm. Yeah, who knows what happens then?
Right? I mean, in our situation, Reef comes out, but
Right. But what else could come
yeah.
with? I don't know.
But I thought that was a very smart choice because I wasn't sure what to expect either. Like I remember like, hey, be ready to play Quinn, and I was like, okay. um, but I also remember I'm like, all right, well, better like go through and review Reef stats too and see what's happening with that. Um, I'm so curious though, Mother Yalva, like that was creepy as fuck. It did not help that last night Alan was watching The Nun when we were going to bed.
Oh
I was like,
God.
no, I can't do this right now.
Yeah, that's not a parallel you probably want to draw or think about getting ready for bed. Uh, yeah, sorry. I did want to try to lean into some of the creepier elements of like eldritch horror and whatnot, so I made the Secret Eater pretty gross. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I tried to make um, yeah, Mother Yelva just as unsettling as possible also.
No, it's perfection. Like it was so good. It's funny you talked about like leaning into horror. I actually had a really good conversation with Alan today, and I know that we had touched on this like a few like episodes ago, but um, horror being used as commentary to deal with uh, cultural issues, societal issues, interpersonal issues, and transforming that into something that encompasses that fear and showing it. And I think that's something that you did really well with both Mother Yalva and the Secret Eater. I think the thing that really threw me off was like, you could tell me a secret and I'll give you a gift. I was like, oh no, I don't trust this at all. This is definitely bad news bears.
I'm glad that was, yeah, I tried to telegraph that as being a bad decision. I'm glad you picked up on it.
Oh yeah, no, creepy woman, like all of a sudden out of nowhere, like we don't trust that shit. Like everything that we have learned from primary school fairy tales, you don't
Yeah,
trust the old woman in the middle of the woods.
yeah, 100%. Never. No
Mm-mm.
matter how nice she sounds.
Yeah. Did Hansel and Gretel teach you nothing?
I was reading something, somebody on Instagram recently posted something along the lines of rule of thumb as when it comes to like telegraphing danger to your players, or like it was mostly referring to traps, but I think
Mm-hmm.
this applies to encounters with um, people, monsters, traps, whatever. Uh, the more dangerous the situation, the more obviously dangerous it needs to be. So like the more telegraphing you as the DM need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you encounter an old woman who is probably not just an old woman and is capable of doing significant harm to you, it needs to be pretty apparent that she's not just an old woman. So I tried to make that as obviously weird as possible,
Yeah.
um, so that there would be no mistaking her for a random passerby. Same thing for the Secret Eater. Um, there's some things about it that just needed to be obviously wrong and obviously gross to know that it had to be dealt with in a very cautious way.
Mm-hmm. The eyes, the mouth eyes. I was like that. No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, that creeped me out too, to be totally honest.
Um, yeah, it was just like definitely one of those things. Where I'm like, I don't like it.
Regretted it the second I thought of it, but I was like, damn it, that means I got to keep it.
Yeah,
That is,
that means it's good. You're like, ooh, I don't like this. Ooh, that means it's got to stay.
yeah. Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad they were effective. Um, the last two, like, internal psyche sessions, I felt like you did such a good job of painting these, um, like, just ethereal dreamscapes that I, for this session, really wanted to make sure that I could bring to life this, like, horror setting with a
Mhm.
little bit of, like, renewed emphasis on eldritch horror. The first
Yeah.
uh, entrance to our setting was obviously some setup, some lore, some whatnot, but we were essentially just like exploring the city of Varns and facing some cult people.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like a soft intro to what we were facing. Coming back to it, I wanted to kind of like live up to what you had said a little bit and kind of double down on here's here's what we're really doing. Um, you know, crazy internal conflict, crazy external conflict, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, because when you see that, it does beg the question, especially for our characters. What's the real nightmare?
Yeah, that's a great question. We might have to answer that one in the future.
Writing it down.
Well,
Uh,
any parting thoughts?
Um, gosh, I'm gonna have it come down. Like, go watch some Ted Lasso or something after like thinking of the mouth eyeballs and the creepy old woman. So we'll definitely
Yeah,
have to find a come down.
that's one of my feel good shows also. Not to
Yeah,
like date this episode too much, but they just announced season 4, so something to
yeah.
look forward to.
I know we just finished season 3, and I was like, they have to have a season 4. Like, there's too many loose ends.
Right?
So definitely looking forward to it. But it is an excellent come down show for anyone who's just looking for like some feel good things.
Yeah. After you spend 2.5 hours with Eldritch horrors, go watch something happy.
Yeah.
Anything to make you laugh and or smile. We like
Mhm.
we like to live in the creepy stuff, but I also like to have a good laugh afterwards before I go to bed.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I think that's it. Like, just, I guess that's the final thought. Take care of yourself. Like, do what you need to do to decompress and unwind, and um, do what brings you joy and makes you feel a little spark.
I will second that. Yeah. Well, thank you for continuing to do what we enjoy doing and playing D&D with me. I appreciate it. Um, Thank you all for joining us behind the veil. I guess we didn't introduce ourselves at the beginning of this, but I'm Nick Kennedy, uh, and with me behind the veil is.
Janna Harrison.
Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you all on the next one.